I'm Julie Saunders.
I'm Jan Wilson. Julie and I both have experience as school librarians, and we've worked together as district library leaders.
In each episode, we'll dive into our profession with interviews and meaningful content to inspire you. We're not experts.
But we're pretty close.
The ideas and opinions shared by any host, guest, or listener are their own and do not represent those of any respective school district.
Welcome to Library Exchange.
This episode is sponsored by Niswonger AV, Advancing Technology, Designing Spaces.
Niswonger AV is your comprehensive K-12 education partner. With 50 years of expertise, Niswonger AV delivers innovative technology and strategic furniture solutions that transform learning environments.
Why choose Niswonger AV? Cutting edge AV technology, intelligent furniture design, a consultant driven approach, and family owned commitment to excellence.
Advancing technology and learning spaces with old-fashioned personal service, because your library deserves more. Hello, Julie.
Hi.
So you're usually the one to get me back on track because, I tend to go in left field, but I'm not going to chit chat today because we want to get to our guest who will have so many, tons of ideas for school librarians.
Our guest today is elementary school librarian Sharon Amolo.
So, Julie, do we want to mention why we're saying school librarian?
So recently in the state of Georgia, our state certification title was updated to list school librarian as the title. It had been switched from media specialist. The role is the same. The standards are the same. Yes, we still have a standard, including instructional technology, but the title is now a school librarian, and most of the metro counties are moving to that title. So getting back to our guest, Sharon is in her 25th year as a school librarian, and before that, she was a classroom teacher for 7 years. She was awarded the Library Media Specialist of the Year for her school district in 2013.
You may recognize Sharon as Book Chick on TikTok. I'm a frequent visitor to her posts.
Me
She
too.
she posts regularly about her library program and a segment she calls Popular Opinion, Library Edition, and even Outfit of the Day.
Welcome to Library Exchange, Sharon.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We're excited to interview you. So to get started, can you tell us a little bit about your school, including the number of students, staff, demographics? Any details that you want to share?
Okay. Well, I work in Georgia, in the metro Atlanta area, in the largest district in Georgia. And my school has a little over 1,000 students and a little over 100 staff members. And we are not a Title I school. We're a suburban school, and we are a diverse, high performing school. Our diversity is about 35% white, 20% Hispanic, about 15% Black, about 15% Asian, and then whatever's left over, you do the math, is the other. And it's a wonderful, wonderful school to work at. I've been at the school for 25 years.
Oh my goodness. And it's pre-K through 5, right?
We are pre-K special ed
Oh,
only.
pre-K
Yeah.
special ed. Thank you for that.
So, we are going to discuss the unique way you look at the learning framework for K through 4 grade levels and forming that partnership with teachers to bring content to life. We understand that you implement many creative learning experiences, but one in particular seems beneficial for others to hear more about. Can you briefly explain what a pop-up museum is?
Well, a pop-up museum is where you bring artifacts and hands-on learning into the school. So instead of having to go out on a field trip, the students get that experience within the school. And I call it a pop-up because it's not permanent. It lasts just long enough to get the classes through, and then it's broken down, and we convert that space back into a regular space for the media center. And my pop-up museums focus either on language arts or social studies.
We definitely want to hear specific opportunities that you offer to your different grade levels. But what I'm interested in is, where do you begin and why did you choose to do this?
Okay, well, I have 6 pop-up museums, currently 5, and then there will be a 6th one added. I do a kindergarten for toys, which is language arts, First grade is going to be tools, which is language arts. That's the one I'm working on. Second grade is Native Americans of Georgia. Third grade is Colonial America. Fourth grade is Westward Expansion. And fifth grade is World War II. I find that the teachers like coming to the media center if I can offer experiences and lessons that they can't easily duplicate in the classroom. So my library program focuses on being an extension or an enrichment of the classroom curriculum. And that was why I decided to do the pop-up museums. So I got started by renting trunks. Not sure if you guys know this, but your national parks have trunks that you can rent. And depending on how close you are, sometimes they're free. If they do charge, it's normally only for the shipping. Also, your state parks, your museums. Like I started with one from our North Georgia History Center because they had from American Revolution up until Vietnam War, and sometimes just regular centers. Also use the Atlanta History Center. A lot of these, if you are Title One, you get a break on it. So, for example, when I rented from the Atlanta History Center, it was $100 for the trunk, but if you were Title One, you got it for $50.
Wow. Sharon, so I take it through the toys and tools, that's the language art classes, but those last four you mentioned are social studies. You're reaching out to a different content area than
Yes.
just language arts, which is great.
Yes, I only had social studies, but recently my district overhauled the language arts curriculum and it really constrained when the classes could come to the media center. At first, I looked at it as an obstacle, but then I thought, okay, this is actually an opportunity to kind of tie into it. And the toys one was actually a suggestion of the teacher where she said, you do those pop up museums for social studies for the upper grades. Could you do one for toys? And immediately I'm kind of a yeah. So, figured it out, and a month later, they had their pop-up museum.
That's great. So I would love to dig in more about the toys in particular. I know that you have all those great tips with cost-effective ways of reaching out to national parks and all that, but creating your own, you have to be pretty resourceful and you have to be creative and think outside of the box to make it happen. And you did it in a short period of time, but can you explain the thought process? How did you get the resources? How did you schedule it? And, what's the experience that the kids actually get in the end?
Well, what Julie's trying to say is tell us about the toys. Tell
Yeah.
us about the
So,
toys.
you're
Some
right.
specific details I want to know
Okay,
about.
yeah, you're right. Funding can be, an issue. I do write grants, and like I said, the other things were cost effective, but the toys were one of the few where I didn't rent anything. Everything was
Wow.
either bought or borrowed. Those of you that are educators know that teachers are kinda hoarders and, in their heart. So, sending out an email and asking, "Do you have this?" I am always amazed by when I ask if someone has this, that they have it in their basement or their parent has it in their basement. So for the toys, the language arts curriculum starts from toys long ago up until today. So we started with the 1700s and went up to the current toys. I sent out an email asking who had toys that they could loan me for the pop-up museum and that the students would not touch these toys because some of these were toys from their childhood. And I got lots of responses, especially from the 1940s up until the 1980s. So we had tons of toys. And then my own children had a lot from the 90s and the 2000s. And then we were able to fill in from there. And so the way it worked was all of the toys that were borrowed were part of a scavenger hunt. I put up a timeline that was color coded because this is kindergarten, so they really can't read, but they know their colors. And they walked around and they found the color. So let's say if 1940s was blue, then they may have had a picture of I don't know. Probably shouldn't have chosen 1940s. Let me go with my age range where I'll remember. Let's say they had a record player, and that was in the 1970s. Because I remember having a little record player when I was a kid, and they had a picture. And they would color it to show that they found that toy, and they had six toys on their sheet that ranged in the different decades, and they walked around and found those, and they worked with a partner for this. And then when they found all their toys, they showed me their sheet, and I would normally just ask them, "Oh, which toy was long ago, or which is a toy that you would like to play with?" So it was like a really quick check in with them. And then once they checked in with me, they were able to move over to the exploration section because what's a toy museum if you can't touch the toys? And in that area, they could play with light brights, which were the updated versions where you don't plug them in, they have batteries. They had magnetiles. I don't know if you remember those little ones that you could push. They have water in them. You try to get the little hoop over the different obstacles and then this other one, which was a little magnetic fishing game, which they loved that more than anything. That fishing game where the teachers were saying they're going to have to buy some of those for their classroom. As the kids finished, they had something to do so that I didn't have to worry about managing behaviors. And after about 10 or 15 minutes of being in that area, depending on how long it took them to finish their scavenger hunt, then it was time for our make and take. With all of my museums, I like to have the kids go away with something and in this one, they had a wooden spinning top. So they colored their top. And I told them, I was like, oh, look at it now. It's just a plain top. And if you remember when you looked at the 1700s part, so those of you that had this on your sheet, this was over here. And you're going to make your own, but we're going to update it for the 2000s. So it's colorful and it's not plain like the colonial kids would have played with. They get permanent markers and they color their top after they finish because, that carpet in the media center is basically just like right over hard floor so you can spin on it. It's not plush. So after they finish coloring their tops, then they just got about 1 or 2 minutes to just spin it and they got to take that with them. And I forgot to say that when they came into the museum, they had to hopscotch into the museum. So
So
I wanted
cute.
some type of game in there too. And so that was also interesting to see those little fine motor skills and coordination of them hopping in. The teachers absolutely loved it. And except for the make and take and then the toys that I had to buy for them to touch, I really didn't have to spend a lot of money on this museum. That's something I want people to take away. You can start small and you can start with something that you may already have some of.
I have some questions.
Mhm.
So, when a class comes to the library to experience the pop up museum, is this all done in one learning session? About how long does it take to get through the scavenger hunt, do the make and take activity per class?
For all of my museums, I normally allot an hour. And if we don't need the hour, then that's fine. So they come in with the toy museum, they hopscotch in, they sit down. I explain the museum, and all of that takes about 10 minutes of me going through because it's the overview is really simple. Like, here's your sheet, and I kind of then just call out a couple of them, like, hey, if I had the Furby, who could tell me what color I would color on my sheet? And I
Hmm.
do 2
So,
or
you're
3
modeling
examples of
it for
yes,
them.
of
Yes.
got to for these, for the littles, you got to.
Yeah.
So for me, to
Mhm.
clarify, each decade was a different color.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
go
So
ahead.
each decade was a different color. And if they
Okay.
go into Book Chick, I will do an updated post on it so that
Great.
way they can easily find because I have that one posted.
So, Sharon,
Mhm.
I just want to reemphasize this. You're not teaching them the content of this unit.
No, but I am basing it on their curriculum. So for
Yes.
all of my museums, I go back into the curriculum and I look at what are the objectives or the standards that they're supposed to learn. And let's say if they have like 6 or 7, obviously I can't cover all of that. So
Right.
I pick out which ones would work best for the museum.
At what point in the learning unit do you feel it's best to introduce this pop up museum for those that don't have an instructional background and don't really understand how that works? Do you do it as an intro in the middle? Does it matter?
It doesn't matter. So it's when depending on where, like I said, we have a little over 1,000 students, and I can only do one museum a day with the way their schedules work. To get all of them at the beginning, or all of them in the middle, or all of them in the
Gotcha.
end doesn't really work. So normally, some will be over 2 different time periods. With the toy one, it actually works out that it's after they finish, just because they do it as their first 9 weeks. And I start off with orientations. I have about a week to get all the kids back through for a second checkout. And then I go immediately into book fair after Labor Day. And by that time, they're
Oh,
wrapping up the toy museum, and I need some time to set it up. And so it's a end of the unit, and that one works fine. It works good as an introduction.
Mhm.
If I'm doing it as an introduction, I just tell the kids, so hey, you're going to be learning about this. So I hope after exploring this, when you read about it and you're doing it in your class, you're like, ah, that's what that was. And you make that
Right.
connection. Or if you're
Right.
doing it, you now have a visual of this is what it looks like. Or if you've already done it, now you're like, oh, that's what they were talking about. So it really doesn't matter when you're doing it. I could do the toy museum at the end of the year and like, hey, remember back in August and September when you learned about this? This is a recap of it. Tying it into the curriculum is where you get the teacher buy-in because as you know, the curriculum is so rigorous, even for kindergarten. Like kindergarten is basically
Mhm.
like first grade used to be.
Wow.
The teachers have to know that what you're offering is beneficial and an enhancement to them and not just something extra for them to do.
Right. So, Sharon, in our last few minutes, I do want to move to the westward expansion. If you could kind of highlight some of the things you shared with us about that pop up
Okay.
museum.
So, another museum I offer is a Westward Expansion, and that's for my fourth graders. And I started this museum by borrowing stuff. So, this is another one where you don't have to have an initial huge investment. You can borrow most of the items, and again, send out emails and find out what your staff has. So, with our Westward Expansion, they have to know technology, Lewis and Clark, the gold rush, the people, and traveling and how the Native Americans were affected by Lewis and Clark. We set up a gold rush store with different items that they would buy and they take on a role of a prospector. And that one I do need assistance for. So my clerk actually runs the store. You could do it where they just go and pick things and write them on their sheet. Their make and take for that one is for the technology. They make a Morse code bracelet of their name.
Cute.
They also, when they go to the general store, they have a list of whether they're a prospector or a settler. They have a list of things to buy, and if they have enough money, they should have a penny left to buy a piece of candy, so they get a hard candy to take with them.
Wait, there's a
Um,
little math.
Yes,
Math is
there's
thrown
a
in there.
math in
Yes.
yes,
Go
That's fun.
math.
yes, and they have, like, little I've, printed off online some money from that time period, so that way they have their money to give to them.
Westward
Me too.
expansion
Fun.
general
I love
store.
it.
And then, for Lewis and Clark, as you know, Lewis and Clark, were going past the Mississippi and they kept journals. I bought little craft notebooks for them and they go over to the area where they look at the furs, the plants, and these are just artifacts that I bought from either Amazon, Etsy, or I found this great place called Crazy Crow Trading Post, which is a Native American one. And so they have lots of different things, including furs. So they after they explore that, they move over to the table and they draw something that they saw on their expedition. They can try on clothing. When trying on the clothing is always one of the favorite parts of the kids. They could try on the different clothing that the women wore, the men wore. We do not do Native American clothing trying on because that's not culturally sensitive. They could touch a rain stick and a bow and arrow and other things. So we use artifacts and that one also takes about an hour. And for that one, the students rotate through centers. So it's not as free flowing as the other one. Just because I can't have 15 kids trying to make a Morse code bracelet. They're divided up into groups and they get about 10 minutes at each area.
So, as we wrap it up, Sharon, you shared so many amazing tips, really highlighting the instructional value of school librarians. And with these pop up museums, I know there are school librarians out there that are already thinking and planning in their heads as they're listening to this podcast, thinking about those interactive stations, how they can make connections with students and how they can provide that enrichment beyond the classroom. Great examples of things people can replicate in their own space.
And that's one thing I want people to come away with. Yes, we are school librarians, but we're more than books.
Yes.
Right.
And having those extra experiences, like I want my kids to be like, ah, I loved going to the media center. I don't remember
Oh.
the media center from when I was a kid until I was
Mhm.
in junior high and high school, but I'm sure it was wonderful. but I want them to love coming there and to know that each time they come, they can have an experience here, whether it's something big like a pop up museum or something small, but it's not always just research and learning the Dewey Decimal System,
Right.
Yeah. So just
Right.
having those extra experiences.
Yes.
Not just a space where I come in and I have to follow these rules.
Yeah.
And
Right.
we're all tied to
Yeah.
a curriculum, a
Yes.
pacing calendar, but
Mhm.
we can do these things with our students. And my takeaway from this is that you perceive something in the beginning as a barrier and look at the opportunity you are providing for your students. So thank you so much for your time
Well,
today.
thank you. I loved, being on this, so thank you so much, and I hope, I gave people ideas. I know the kids are always excited because even the past ones, they'll say, "Oh, do you remember when we did that in 3rd grade?" So it's something that they remember, so
Oh,
I hope this is something that the listeners and the school librarians can take bits and pieces of to implement with their students.
thank you, Sharon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you so
thank you.
much.
Thank you.
So, Julie, we exchanged ideas during the interview. It's time for our recap. Do you want to start us off?
Sure. So I love the concept of the pop up museum. I think any librarian from anywhere can implement this idea. You can utilize local resources, collect artifacts from while you're traveling, ask for
Mhm.
donated items from staff or community members. It's a great way for teachers to become emotionally invested in your library programming as they help you find resources. You really can bring any topic alive in your own space.
Yeah, I give her pop-up museums an A+ because they're an extension of the curriculum and she's not teaching the content directly. She's helping teachers, meet those specific objectives or standards. And she's creating an experience that teachers can easily set up in their classroom. So the school library has space and flexibility. Go for it, even though I know this takes a lot of setting up and taking down.
So the cool thing is that the pop-up museums can be implemented at any point when the topic is being taught in the classroom.
Right.
That's helpful in large schools in particular when you have multiple teachers per grade level to be able to provide that meaningful programming for all students in the grade level. I also feel like the activities that are provided for students are equally as important as the pop-up museum. It's not just a matter of reserving or creating this museum and just letting people go from station to station.
Right.
It's actually having interactive activities where the kindergartners can be fully immersed, gather facts while working together, explore a little history, learn some basic things that you want kindergartners to know as far as interacting and learning, the whole learning process.
What about the fact that the students always leave the museums with something? Because you know what's going to happen next, Julie, when they take that thing home?
What
Hopefully,
what will happen?
hopefully, hopefully someone at home's going to ask about the item and then that conversation becomes advocacy, even though our littles don't know that word because the student is now the messenger for the library program.
And Sharon,
Um,
oh, sorry.
it's okay,
Sharon,
good.
Sharon was just really good about explaining how, the toy museum and then the
Hmm.
other one about the, what was it, the Wild West or the Western Front?
Westward expansion.
Westward Expansion, and to me, those were both age appropriate for those grade levels. But again, the toy museum, I just really am fascinated by because it does allow the kindergartners to again collaborate with partners,
Yes.
interact with the artifacts, and then, like you said, they get to leave with something and then be able to express what their new learning is to someone at home, hopefully.
Yeah, you mentioned westward expansion because if we think about the beginning of our conversation, she said because the language arts curriculum had kind of shifted and there were some time constraints, look what she did. She said, I'm going to start looking at the social studies curriculum. And
Absolutely,
yeah, that was awesome.
I
I'm
love
not
that.
Yeah, I'm not sure why field trips are less common these days, Julie, because she works in a large district. So I don't know if there's driver shortages or just not enough, I don't know what the cost is. So she's bringing that field trip experience to the school where the students already are.
Absolutely. I think it's a great concept. So basically, this idea can be implemented with almost any topic at any grade level. And, if you feel like you struggle with putting this type of event together, then just reach out to your local schools or local colleges, organizations that might be able to provide these types of artifacts for schools to reserve.
Yeah, the last thing I do want to say, Julie, is One of my favorite moments was when she said, "We're more than books." So, school librarians, when you plan something like this, you need to invite your administrators, board members, and communities because we have to do more than just say we're more than books. We need to highlight that what are the skills that matter most now, what experiences we're offering our students. That's very important.
Showcasing your instructional role is one of the best ways to advocate for your library program.
Agree. So, you guys follow Sharon at Book Chick on TikTok. As a veteran teacher and librarian, she posts regularly and you will not be disappointed. Thanks for tuning in.
Make sure to visit our website at www.libraryexchangepodcast.com.
You'll find episode notes and links. You can even submit your questions or inspiring stories that may be featured on the podcast.
If you're looking for some swag for your library or book-loving friends, visit libraryexchange.etsy.com.
That's a lot of URLs, so I'm glad you had to say all of that, Julie.
Thanks for joining us. We can't wait to have you back for our next episode of Library Exchange.